My name's Deputy Inspector General of Police, Dawla Shehu, PSC. To talk about PRAWA, Prisoners Rehabilitation and Welfare Action, we have a very, very good rapport, good understanding, and good synergy between the police and PRAWA for many years. It is an institution that concerns primarily on respect of dignity and human rights, which the police are supposed to be part of it. And also capacity building to the police to enable them to perform effectively and efficiently in conjunction with the fundamental respect to the fundamental human rights as enshrined into the Nigerian constitutions of 1999. It's very, very beneficial, and at the same time in building capacity and enabling the police officers to perform credibly when they go out to discharge their duties. The police is an organization that deals with all kinds of human beings. When they come across a police officer, they deserve to be respected by police in ensuring not only their security and safety, but also in respecting their dignity and human rights. So in a nutshell, the training and retraining we are getting from the PRAWA is to enable us have police that will function and discharge their duties in a most standard and acceptable manner by members of the public. At this juncture, I want to say kudos. Welcome to the Nigeria Police Force online training.
This module is on the procedure for the use of force, firearms, and other law enforcement equipment. And the lesson objective is to create awareness on the procedure for the use of force, firearms, and other law enforcement equipment that are charged to the police. The expected outcome is that the trainees will be able to, at the end of the training, to describe the procedure for the use of force, firearms, and other law enforcement equipment, including the notion of force continuum, or what we also refer to as the graduated or differentiated use of force. As a way of introduction, the term use of force describes the rights of an individual or authority to settle conflicts or prevent certain actions by applying measures to either dissuade another party from a particular course of action or physically intervene to stop them. Governments allow the police and personnel of some other security agencies to employ force to actively prevent imminent commission of crime or for deterrence. The use of force is governed by statute and is usually authorized in a progressive series of actions referred to as use of force continuum, or what others call graduated or differentiated use of force. Before going ahead to deal with the procedures for the use of force and firearms, it is imperative that we differentiate between force, unarmed force, and armed force. What is force? Force in law enforcement is the use of physical means, or is the use or the threat to use physical means to achieve an authorized objective. And I need to let us know here that for the members of the Nigeria Police Force, the authorized objectives must never be different from those duties that are found in Section 4 of the Police Act. So it therefore means that whatever force that is deployed by any member of the force must strictly, absolutely be for the purpose of executing any of those functions in Section 4 of the Police Act. There are two types of force. The first one is unarmed force. And what is unarmed force? Unarmed force is simply defined as force that is short of armed force. I hope there's no ambiguity in that. Force that is short of armed force. Why armed force is the use of weapons, including firearms, less lethal incapacitating weapons, and other law enforcement equipment. It should be borne in mind that police officers are authorized to use force and to bear and use firearms and other law enforcement equipment within their capacities and in the areas where they are deployed for the exercise of their official functions. It therefore implies that members of the Nigeria Police Force may only bear firearms or other law enforcement equipment for the exercise, strictly for the exercise of their statutory functions. Police officers are permitted to use force in order to gain control of a situation or a resistant offender. The implication is that whatever law enforcement is deployed, whenever force is deployed, the purpose for the deployment of force is to gain control. Is to either gain control of a situation, gain control of an individual, or gain control of a group of people who are suspected to be constituting threats to security. So it should ever be borne in mind that the best option that is available to any police officer is to gain the willing cooperation of a citizen. So it is only when it becomes difficult to gain the willing cooperation of the citizen or to gain the willing cooperation of a group of people that law enforcement officers, particularly police officers in this instance, may resort to the use of force for the purpose of achieving an authorized objective. But it is also pertinent to mention that every such force must be measured, must be justifiable. These are some of the authorized law enforcement equipment that are on charge to the police. Don't forget that we say that they can only deploy law enforcement equipment that are within their capacity. So these are some of the law enforcement equipment that are within the capacity of the police. So it therefore means that they cannot deploy any equipment that are outside their capacity. So some of the equipment that are within the capacity of the police are assault rifles, pistols, tear gas launcher, rigid handcuffs, plastic handcuffs, batting, shield, gas mask, leg and hands protector, body armor, stun gun, armored personnel carrier, and water cannon. Talking about the use of force, it's very important that we place so much emphasis on the importance of training. Every police officer who bears a firearm or any other item of law enforcement equipment must have received current and proper training on the care, the custody, and the use of the particular weapon or item that is assigned to him or her. It therefore implies that no officer of the force must be issued with any law enforcement equipment he has not been trained on, because an untrained bearer of firearm or any other law enforcement equipment does not constitute danger to members of the public alone, but also to himself. Then it's also imperative that whosoever is going to be issued with any law enforcement equipment must be very conversant with the first orders on the justifiable use of firearms. He must know the permissible circumstances when firearms may be used, as stated in the reviewed First Order 237. Such officer must also ensure strict adherence to the plan principles, that is, the principles of proportionality, legality, accountability, and necessity. It is the responsibility of whosoever is issued any law enforcement equipment to ensure the safe custody of that equipment. So, and we should know that force must also be used for lawful purposes, and a suspect remains innocent until proven otherwise. These are some of the things that should guide whosoever is deploying force. Members of the Nigeria Police shall not use force or firearms or any other law enforcement with equipment with the intention to kill any person. We should remember that one of our main duties is to protect life and property. So even when it is necessary that force be deployed, it should not be with the intention of killing. Then non-violent means must be applied as far as possible before resorting to the deployment of force. And every officer must have it at the back of his or her mind that physical force, firearms, or any other attempts of law enforcement equipment can only be used when other non-violent means remain ineffective. And before going to deploy armed force, the first thing to be considered is the deployment of unarmed force. But unarmed force will only be deployed when it is possible and when it has the possibility of achieving the authorized objective. So, if unarmed force cannot achieve the authorized objective, we now move to the deployment of less lethal weapons if they are possessed by members of the force, and they must only be deployed by those who have been trained to use them. It's necessary for me to point out that there are just two types of weapons, lethal and less lethal. There is no law enforcement equipment that can be categorized as non-lethal, because if any equipment that is even regarded of causing a less impact is not properly deployed, it could cause fatality. So that is why we say that there are just two types of law enforcement equipment, the leather and the non-leather. So if the unarmed force fails, then the officer or the unit can go ahead to deploy less leather weapon. So if these preceding measures fail or remain ineffective or are without any promise of achieving an authorized objective, an attempt should be made, if possible, to make use of the visual and audible effects of preparing a firearm for use. If the preceding measure remain ineffective or do not hold any promise of achieving the authorized objective, then the use of armed force against a person may be authorized. But it should be borne in mind too that only an amount of force that is reasonably necessary to effectively bring an incident under control must be used. A police officer must always strive to act in a timely manner in the use of force or firearms. This means that in the use of force and firearms, deployment of force must not be too early and it must not be too late. When force is deployed too early, it becomes unnecessary and it will be termed unjustifiable. When force is also deployed too lately, it will be termed unnecessary and unjustifiable. If force is said to be deployed too early, if the threat is not high to the extent of warranting force to be deployed. I hope that is clear. And force is termed to be deployed too lately if the threats are ceased. So the moment the threat ceases, the deployment of force too must also cease. The deployment of force will be termed to be too late when force is still deployed when the threat is no more present. What are the things to do before using firearms? We know that the deployment of firearms is the last stage of the procedure for the use of force. So before deploying firearms, there are certain things that the police officer must do. One, the members of the force must identify themselves. A clear warning of their intent to use firearms must also be made known, and they should give enough time for that warning to be obeyed. But they may, however, not do this if doing so will unduly place them at the risk of death or serious bodily harm, or create a risk of death or serious bodily harm to other persons, or if it is clearly inappropriate or pointless in the circumstances. But whenever the use of force or firearms or any other law enforcement equipment is unavoidable, the members of the force shall ensure the following: only use force for lawful purposes. Then 2, they should act with restraint and only use the minimum degree of force that is necessary and proportional to the seriousness of the threat and necessary to achieve the authorized objective. They should also respect and preserve human life and cause the minimum of injury to people. They should avoid inflicting torture and other cruel, inhuman, and degrading treatment or punishment. Ensure that minimum damage is caused to property. They should also, as soon as possible, help anyone who is hurt and ensure that medical aid is rendered if needed. They should not forget that they have that very important duty of protecting life and property. And as soon as possible, ensure that relatives or friends of people injured or affected by the incident are notified. One important thing that I need to point out is that no police officer should point a firearm or a less lethal incapacitating weapon in the direction of any person other than in the circumstances and to achieve the objectives set out in Force Order 237. The mandatory report and investigation of any use of force is something that we cannot avoid. So as soon as any incident involving the use of force or firearms or any other law enforcement equipment is deployed, and regardless of whether or not such use resulted in death or injury to people or damage to property, the police officer concerned must verbally inform his superior officer, who will in turn inform the police, the office of the Commissioner of Police of that command, and record the details of the incident. The record should include the dates and time, the date, time, and place of the incident, the name of the police officer that is involved, that is the police officer that deployed the force, the event leading to the use of firearms or any other law enforcement equipment must also be clearly stated, and why the officer decided to use force, firearms, or any other law enforcement equipment must also be indicated in the report. The report must also include the person or those who were subjected to the use of force and the apparent results of the use of force, firearms, or any other law enforcement equipment. What are the consequences of violation? When a level of force beyond verbal command is used, the individual authority authorizing the force is accountable for the degree of force applied. So members of the Nigeria Police are advised that obedience to superior orders shall not preclude a violation of the force orders or the rules that it contains from being considered as an act of serious misconduct. If the police officer concerned knew that an order to use firearms resulting in the death or injury of a person was manifestly in violation of the force orders and had a reasonable opportunity to refuse to follow it, in any case, we should also bear it in mind that responsibility also rests on the superior officer who gave an order in violation of the force orders, and let me say in violation even of the plan principles that are universal and that are also applied indiscriminately.